Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing October favorites, and I really debated whether or not I wanted to make this video because I've been making so many recommendations videos for Sephora, for Beautylish, but there are a few things that actually you can't find at either retailer that I wanted to mention, and I thought it would be fun just to talk about like my October favorites, like under that sort of umbrella. So that's what we're gonna do. And if you're new to my channel, what I like to do is apply as many of the products to my face as possible, do some cutaways so you can see the products in action. But let's go ahead and get started with the foundation that I have on. So this is the Clé de Peau The Foundation N. So this is the foundation that comes in this really fancy pants jar. And this is a newly reformulated, newly repackaged version of the foundation. Now this version is the Foundation N. I don't know if the N stands for new, but it does have SPF 22 versus SPF 21. So that's another way to distinguish the new one from the old one. The old one, I will say, had a very creamy moisturizing texture. I have very, very dry skin and I enjoyed it definitely like in the winter time. But I did feel like if my skin wasn't feeling especially dry that day and if I'd put on all of my skincare, that the foundation was a little bit much. So I find that this newer version is actually not quite as like heavy and rich as the previous version, which I think is really, really great. It has like a lighter texture to it. I feel like it sets down by itself. I don't actually have any powder on over the foundation today. Again, I have dry skin, so if you have oilier skin, it may be a different situation for you. But I just really like this kind of formula improvement. I think it wears really, really well. I have the shade BF10 and I actually added something into this foundation to kind of warm up the tone of this foundation because BF10 works for me in their other foundation, the one that comes in the tube. I think it's their Radiant Cream Foundation, but it doesn't work in this one. It is a little bit too pale for me. So I'll talk about what I added in just a second. But this foundation is just really, really lovely. I love the lighter texture. I think it's a great improvement over the previous version. I don't know if that version was like the original, but the previous version. And I really love the longevity and I love the very natural skin-like, slightly radiant kind of finish that it gives my skin. It's a little bit difficult to see with all this other makeup that I have on, like the finish of this foundation, but I did do like a trying new makeup with this on. If you want to see me actually applying it or whatever, I'll link that video down below. But this is a really wonderful, wonderful foundation. I really enjoy it. So that's been my favorite for the past couple of weeks, I would say, since I got that. Now, what I added into the foundation was not only for like to warm up the tone, but it was also to add like a little bit of a metallic sheen to it. So this is another one of my favorites for this past month. It is the By Terry Brightening CC Serum. And they extended the shade range for this Brightening CC Serum. Now, I love this serum. I feel like this is one of those iconic products from By Terry, and I love the Sunny Flash, but the Sunny Flash is a very bronzy shade. And when I use that by itself, like in the summertime, I think it looks really nice. It looks really healthy, but I have to like blend it all the way down. That's how bronzy it is. So they came out with all of these new shades, which work really, really well for me. If you have a paler skin tone, they came out with Nude Glow, which I love like all by itself. They came out with Peach Glow 2.75, and another one, I think it looks really, really great on my skin all by itself. This one does a little bit more brightening than the Nude Glow. And then the other one that I've been using a lot is number 5 Sienna Light, like I was just holding up. So this is the shade that I actually added into the foundation. So I probably scooped out about a quarter teaspoon of the foundation, and then I added about half a pump of this. And it always seems like it's going to be a little bit too dark when I mix it up on the back of my hand. I'm always like, ooh, I think I added too much of the CC serum. But the CC serum is so sheer. So even though it looks a little bit too deep on the back of my hand because it's just in this little concentrated spot, once I spread it all over my face, I think it looks incredible. So that's what I have on as my base. I didn't even need to blend it down my neck too far. I just kind of like brought it down below my jaw. and it just adds like that little bit of warmth that I need to the BF10, because I didn't want to go out and get a whole nother a whole nother jar of this foundation. If I did, and if you use me as shade reference, I probably would pick up BF20. But this is, if you have this, if you ended up purchasing this, this is really, really great to add in, because as you can see, these CC serums also have like a really nice, subtle, kind of like pearly sheen to them. And that was also something I wanted to kind of add into my base. It's so subtle. I mean, all this that you see is a highlight, which we'll talk about. It's so, so subtle. You could probably see like a little bit of it on my forehead. I do have a little bit of highlight kind of brushed over my forehead, but otherwise it's just the base, and it leaves my skin looking so gorgeous. So alone, I think this is incredible. I think it is a wonderful foundation, really beautiful. Like I said, very subtle, radiant kind of finish to it. Longevity is there, so I really enjoy that about it. And if you want to add just a little bit of warmth to the shade that you have, and a little bit of a pearly sheen, the Brightening CC Serum from By Terry is great, and I love these by themselves. I recommended these during the Beautylish gift card event. If I can find them elsewhere, I'll definitely link them down below, but Beautylish was the only place that I saw that carried them outside of the By Terry site. So anyway, these two shades and the Sienna Light are the three that I've been using a lot. The other shade that they came out with is even lighter than Nude Glow. So that I would use as a liquid like highlighter, but I haven't been reaching for that one as much as I've been reaching for these three. Let's move on to the Clé de Peau Luminizing Face Enhancers. So Clé de Peau seems like they're kind of going through this revolution with their makeup line. They seem like they're repackaging everything, reformulating everything, kind of like rethinking the color range for everything. And these luminizing face enhancers, I've always been a really big fan of. Not only are they in really gorgeous packaging, this is very similar to the previous version. The previous version's highlights were more subtle than the current version that they just came out with. So these luminizing face enhancers have a little bit more of a sheen to them, I think, than the previous version. So the three that I've been using the most, let me actually start with the one that I'm using as bronzer, and that is in the shade 22 Shooting Stars. So that is this luminizing face enhancer. And what I do when I want to bronze is I really will focus my brush along the outside. That's where like the deeper parts of the pan are. And I kind of focus that like underneath my cheekbone, and you know, basically where I would bronzer or bronze, kind of brought it down my nose a little bit. It has, I mean, you definitely need to like a very kind of glowy cheek and face product if you use this as a bronzer, and I absolutely do. So I have no problem using such a glowy kind of bronzer to bronze up my face. So that is the shade 22 Shooting Stars. And then what I'm using as blush is Sunset's Brilliance. This is number 203. So this has a little bit of peach to it. And again, I'll just kind of focus my brush kind of along here just to make sure I pick up a lot of the peach that's going on. Otherwise, it's sort of more of a highlight. So yeah, so I like to focus my brush around here, and I applied it to the apples of my cheeks and I brought it out, but that's like the little bit of peachiness that you see. It's also this highlight that you see as well. And then for highlight, which I did not need to put on because between those two products, I definitely had enough glow going on, but I decided to add just a little bit of something to make my cheekbones pop a little bit more. And this is the highlight shade that I would reach for, which is 202 Golden Galaxy. This actually reminds me of one of their older shades. I think it was Almond. It may have been Almond. Anyway, this one is lighter than the other two that I used, and it makes for a really wonderful, gorgeous highlight if you have a similar skin tone to me. So trying to see if you can differentiate. So what I used as blush, number 22, that has more of like a golden kind of reflect to it. And then what I used as highlight is up here. It has a little bit more of like a more neutral gold, a little bit less golden, not quite as white as like a silver highlight, but definitely whiter than this right here. So I hope you can see the difference. I know it's really hard to tell, especially through the camera and especially through like something like with such a subtle difference. But those are the 3 Clé de Peau shades that I have on, and I love these. Like I said, I think these have a little bit more of a sheen than the previous version of these luminizing face enhancers, but they're not too in your face. I still find these to be a very grown-up, elegant, smooth, glossy kind of highlight versus one that's just really, really super bright. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm really enjoying a lot of these revamped Clé de Peau products. Like I do love their lipsticks and that Radiant Cream Foundation. Like everything that I've tried from their revamped line has really, really impressed me. So anyway, moving on, we have some more face products. So the Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate Highlighting Duo in Peach Light has been something I've been reaching for quite a bit. And let me just do a quick swatch since I don't have these on my cheeks. Here are the 2 shades from Peach Light. Now, this is also like a shade range extension for Tom Ford. They had Mood Light in this Shade and Illuminate Highlighting Duo, and that had kind of a more typical kind of like highlight and bronze kind of duo. And then they came out with this Peach Light recently, Nude Light and Tan Light. The Nude Light and the Tan Light are a little bit too yellow gold, warm and deep for my skin tone. I think they would be great if I was doing kind of like a look, maybe like a holiday look or something very specific, but for every day, Peach Light definitely works out better for me. This is a great kind of blush topper if you want to add a little bit of a sheen, and this makes for a great straight up highlight. The highlight is, I don't know if you can see, there definitely is a little bit of peachiness in there, but there's also a little bit of pink, which actually makes the highlight a little bit more cool toned than like a straight up peach highlight would be. So anyway, I really, really love this duo. I really love these baked gel powder products from Tom Ford, from most anyone, but from Tom Ford, they're really lovely. So that is another cheap product I wanted to mention. And then finally, and then we'll just have to move on, but there's been so many good ones, is the Hourglass Elephant palette. This has just been sitting out on my vanity because every time I put it away, I pull it back out to do my makeup. And I've been going really hard with this blush, which is Iridescent Coral. This one is great if I want something just a little bit cooler, but they are very, very close. And this one I find to be just a little bit punchy. This is a great, great bronzer. It is definitely, on my skin tone, very warm. So I do like using it as bronzer, maybe not so much as contour. So I like kind of brushing this lightly on my forehead, down my nose, like on my cheeks or whatever, but to kind of like carve out my cheekbones or do any other contouring, this is not it, but it is a gorgeous, gorgeous bronzer. And then this highlight is out of this world. So actually, let me do some swatches. Look at that highlight. A little bit deep for my skin tone, but it's so bright that I can generally get away with it. Here is the bronzer. Let's see if you can see how warm it is. Maybe. And then the 2 blushes. Here's the center one, and here's the one on the right. So I hope you can see the difference there. And then I'm not gonna bother swatching these 2 because they are just like powders and they won't really show up that well on my arm. But anyway, those are the 4 that I've been using the most in this palette. And it's really, really great. I don't always like these Hourglass ambient lighting palettes because, I don't know, sometimes I just don't like either the shade selection or it just seems like it's very powder heavy, but this one is a really nice balance with these 2 powders, a highlight, a bronze, and then 2 blushes. I think this is like a really ideal kind of assortment of shades. So that is the Elephant palette from Hourglass. They have 2 other ones. I do like the Tiger one if you have a deeper skin tone. I think that one is gorgeous. And the Butterfly one, I've said this before, is a little lackluster because it doesn't have a bronzer in there and has a lot of powders. It feels a little bit redundant. So anyway, that's the Elephant palette from Hourglass. And before I move on to eye and lip products, I just want to pause here and point out the new Refer brushes. If I don't do it now, I'm probably gonna forget, and these brushes are incredible. I love them. So this is the new set of 5, and they are 50% off right now. So I believe this set would normally be $150, but you can get it in their concept store for $75. Incredible. Again, I will link it down below if you're interested. But we have these 5 brushes. This one, admittedly, this one at the end, this really, really fine detail brush, I have not used. I don't really have a use for this one, but I do think if I need a really fine brush, it's like, look no further. I have never seen a brush quite this fine. So that is the brush number 34. Now for the rest of these brushes, these are like dream brushes. Because of their size, they all have a very unique size to them. So this brush number 37 is like a cheek brush, but it's just a little bit smaller, I would say, than your typical cheek brush. And I'm just looking around for a typical cheek brush. Well, here's one from Bobbi Brown, which I would say is kind of like more of a typical size. So you can see, well, it's not a round ferrule, but you can see like how much fluffier it is. Here's one from Pkwy. I think this is a nice cheek brush. You can use like blush, powder, contour, buff in powders with this or whatever. So again, you can see how much fluffier it is than this 37. And I really like brushes that have a simple shape to them, but the size is a little bit unusual because I just feel like that makes them a little bit more versatile because you can still use this as a cheek brush, and because it has a round ferrule, it makes for a really great buffing brush. But because it's not that big, you could also like set your under eyes. You can really get into the crevice of your nose if you're trying to set down that area. I just think it's a really great shape. And the same with these. Like here's a flat shader brush. So for reference, here's Rephr's number 1 brush. Here's like a very typical flat shader brush size, I would say. So this is number 1. And now here is number 33. And you can see like how much fatter it is. And because I love one and done shadows, and I actually use this brush to apply today's eyeshadow, I just go back and forth a few times, swipe, 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 and it's like done. It just makes for really, really quick work. And I love that the shape is a little bit pointier than a typical shader. Typical shader is just like kind of rounded. This has a little bit of a point. It's not a point, but a little bit more of a point there. And I think it's really great. Even though this is a big brush, you can kind of get into a corner there. So this brush has been indispensable ever since I got it. And then these 2 brushes, oh my God. So this brush, number 36, this is one of those angle brushes that I just can't get enough of. I love this shape. Very, very similar to the BK Beauty concealer brush, foundation brush, but the hairs on the Rephr brush are a little bit shorter. So this brush is a little bit denser. And it's like the perfect kind of like brush if you're used to using your finger. So it's great for concealer. It's great for like little areas. It is great for cream shadow if you just want to swipe it on. It is so wonderful. I just love this brush. So that's number 36. And then number 35, this brush is pretty much the exact same size as my all-time favorite Westman Atelier Baby Blender brush. Look at that. So here's Westman Atelier, here's Rephr, and I love it. Again, it makes for great like one and done cream shadows, even powder shadows if you want. Definitely great for working out like concealer, other cream products, doing any sort of like detailed cheek work if you need to like maybe blend out a certain area. So good. And the main difference between these 2 brushes, I would say, is this is synthetic hair and this is natural hair. So all of the Rephr brushes, I don't want to say all of them. Well, all of the ones in this set at least are undyed goat hair, and it is the most versatile natural hair brush that you can use, and I love them. You can use them with cream or powder. They're just great. This latest set from Rephr really has blown me away. So anyway, I will link to it down below in my description box. And like I said, I wanted to just get it out of the way and not talk about them all the way at the end because I'd probably forget. So anyway, let's move on to eyeshadows. Now, you guys know I was going to talk about the Tom Ford Violet Satine Quad. I love this quad. And in fact, it took a lot for me not to use it today because I really wanted to. But let me do some swatches here. So this quad is in the cream formula. So it is a little bit different from the typical eye color quads from Tom Ford. So they are like a very kind of powdery cream formula, but they blend, they pick up and they blend just beautifully. I love, love, love this formula. I think it's incredible. I think it's so smooth. I think the pigmentation is right on. And this particular quad is so gorgeous. Look at this color story. I love it. I absolutely love it. These two top shades are so much more interesting than they look in the pan. I think this raisin color is such a good sort of dimension builder next to this. I love putting these two on together. I'll add this to the inner corner. I'll use this as liner if I want, but these two on my lid, I have been using that quad like non-stop. So anyway, you guys have heard me talk about this quad all month, so I'm gonna move on. The eyeshadow that I have on today is actually from the Natasha Denona Glam palette. Now, in my Sephora recommendations video, I talk about the My Dream palette from Natasha Denona. I think it is wonderful. I think if that color story speaks to you, you can't go wrong. It is really, really gorgeous. I think it's a palette that looks more beautiful in person than it does in pictures, which is, I think, unusual. Sometimes I'm disappointed when I get makeup. I'm like, oh, it looks so much better in the pictures, but not the My Dream palette. That one is really, really beautiful. But when I was kind of getting ready for the Sephora recommendations video, which is literally all month, I've been getting ready for it, I go through all of my makeup. And so the Natasha Denona Glam palette has always been a favorite of mine. But once I pulled this out, I haven't been able to stop using it. It's just a fantastic palette. So today, despite this being a very cool tone palette, I wanted to show more of its versatility. So I'm like, let me do a look that's a little bit more neutral, maybe even warm leaning. So I have this shade, this bottom right-hand corner shade. They call it a brow bone shade. Anyway, I have that all over my lid. And it is, I would say it's a pretty neutral kind of like brown with a gold metallic sheen to it. And then I took Blend, this matte shade up here, and I just worked it out on top and then the outer corners. And that's it. And I feel like I came out with pretty much like a neutral eyeshadow look. Again, maybe a little bit warm because of that gold shimmer to it. But usually when I come into the Glam palette, right, all you see is just all these cool tones, these great sort of like gray silver based shades. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of like do something a little bit different. But this palette is absolutely stunning. I can't get enough of it. I mean, how long has this been out now? More than a year, right? You know, the green brown palette, the 28 pan palette, that has been my #1 palette for a very long time. It probably still is. But this one is like creeping up there. This is definitely #2, maybe taking over the #1 spot. So anyway, just had to shout out this palette because it's so, so good. I love it so much. Okay, and the last eye product that I want to talk about are these Pat McGrath Quints. So this one, which is the Bronze Bliss, this one really stood out to me. The other one is very pretty too, but this one I think is just perfect for the holidays, and it's a little bit different for Pat McGrath. The other one seemed a little bit more typical for her brand. Not to say that that's not a good thing, but I really like this. This was like, oh, that's pretty. So let me do some swatches of these. The metallic shades, and I will point them out, are intense, like this one. Do you see this? This goes on almost like, oh my God, like an oil paint. Isn't that insane? And then here are the two bronzier shades at the bottom. Oof, isn't that gorgeous? It is stunning. I actually had a hard time figuring out like what eye look I wanted to do, like something from here or something from Natasha Denona. Anyway, and I'm bummed that these aren't on Sephora. These are, I think, exclusively sold at the Pat McGrath site. I don't know if that's gonna change during the VIB sale, but right now, as far as I know, these are only available on the Pat McGrath site. But I really, really love this color story. I love these finishes. I love the quality of the shadows. They just worked beautifully for me, and I just love them. I love them. So that's the last eyeshadow palette I'll be talking about. Let's move on to lips. So let's start with the lipstick that I have on. This is the Hermes limited edition shade that they have for fall. It's number 76 Matte Rouge. I think the translation would be Cinnabar. And I just love this shade because when you first look at it here in the tube, right, you're like, oh, it's like a rusty red. You put it on and you're like, okay, I see like the orange in there. I see the warmth. But then I feel like I see it where it thins out a little bit. So like along the edge of my lips and along the inside of my lips, it has like also a little bit of pinkiness to it. It's so interesting. So it's not too warm and rusty and grungy looking. There's a softness to it. So that is number 76, and this is a matte finish, obviously. And the other one that they came out with, which is gorgeous as well, this is number 62, Matte Rouge FEU. I really need to look up how to pronounce that. But this is a really, really bright shade. So it's much brighter than this one, although both are very bright, but this one is more of like one of those shades that really glows when you put it on. And this was a hard sort of choice also, like which lipstick to put on for this video. But I put this one on. It's actually on in my thumbnail for the Trying New Makeup video where I tried these out. So anyway, I went with this one. But this is gorgeous. And I love these lipsticks for the holidays. I think it's great. Obviously, I love them for every day. I just think they're really beautiful. And of course, leave it to Hermes to create like a very sophisticated, bright red. Sometimes I feel like, you know, just like a bright kind of red, like a bluish red or whatever, I feel like, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but sometimes I feel like can look a little cheap. But these look very elegant, I think. I think there's like just like a little bit of something to them to kind of keep them from looking like just too basic of a bold red. And I absolutely love these. And then another Sisley Fito lip twist. You guys have heard me talk about this product in many of my favorites. I've long been a fan of shade number 1, shade number 7, which is that coral shade. I love their new shade, is it 23, which is like a My Lips But Better kind of shade. These are Sisley's tinted lip balms, and they come in this crayon form. So easy to use, and because they're a tinted lip balm, they're not overly pigmented. They're lip balm, so they're really comfortable on the lips. And during the Beautylish sale, I picked up 2 shades, and this one shade, which is number 2, I think the name is called Baby, is this baby pink. And this has been the perfect pairing when I do like a really cool toned eye look. So like when I use the Tom Ford Violet Sateen Quad, I'll throw this on and it's just this like really pretty, I mean, you have to like pink and purple for that look, but it's a really pretty pink and purple, like cool toned kind of look. And you can see how the pigmentation is light, you know, it's not a serious kind of like pink, like white-based kind of pink lipstick or whatever, which is another color I feel like can border on looking a little bit cheap on the lips. But when you make it sheer and your natural lip color kind of comes through underneath, I think it looks really, really pretty and not too pinky pink. Wow, I hope that made sense. Anyway, those are my favorites for October. And of course, I named a whole bunch of other favorites in all of my recommendations videos, like I've mentioned. But let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I hope you guys all had a lovely October. I cannot believe it is November and we're coming to the end of this month. It's so insane. So insane. But give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.